Hello and welcome to your program Hyperlink, where we all get together and answer your questions on a variety of teenage topics that affect both you and your parents. Today's episode is answering questions from your parents, so if they are around, ask them to join you. We left you in our previous episode talking about problems of teenagers. Today, however, we will discuss together the issue of parent-teen relationship. So let's go and see what the youth and their parents think about this subject.
As a parent, you have to be slightly lenient with your teenager. It always can't be a yes or no thing. I mean, you kind of have to be lenient with your child. I mean, you can definitely set rules, but as long as you're lenient, I mean, we're both teenagers. We've both been through it. It's so hard when a parent is like down and strict. It's really hard. I mean, you would honestly grow a better relationship with your child if you're more lenient and you're more trustworthy with your child. I mean, that's just my point of view.
But we're not saying we're not saying to be too strict,
right?
Or too lenient. I'm sorry, lenient. There's like a measure. Like you're not gonna let them do anything they want,
right?
Because God set you guys in our lives to like show us the right way.
Correct.
Now there is things where we have to take our own decisions on so we can learn from them, because life is about learning. If you guys are gonna be there for the whole route, then what's the point of us growing up?
Thank you for your participations and your personal opinions. Mum, leave me alone. I've got issues. Sound familiar? Wouldn't you love to know what those issues are? The teenage years are perhaps the most difficult to navigate through. Teens deal with temptation, raging hormones, broken heart, school performance, anxiety, decisions about their future, self-esteem, and so forth. It's not an easy time, of course. Most teenagers think that their parents are clueless. They don't seem to realize that their parents were once teenagers themselves. And of course, throughout the ages, teenagers have always had issues. However, today's teen seems to be facing more choices than ever before. Here is a list of just some of the issues that our teens have to deal with on a daily basis. Grades, jobs, drugs, drinking, sexuality, pregnancy, STDs, fitting in, gangs, college choices, and body image. Peer pressure and teen role models can also cause conflict. In addition, with the high rate of divorce, more teens than ever have to deal with their parents' own dating issues. Adjusting to step brothers, sisters, mothers, and fathers is another situation that parents have to be sensitive to. The most important thing is to try to determine if your child's issues are a normal part of the teen years or if they are worthy for professional intervention. So now let's go and answer the first question.
How can I have a better relationship with my teenagers, and what are the main points to look out for to make this relationship last forever?
Enjoy them now, they'll soon be teenagers. I am sure you might have heard this said to you before. Family life does not have to be a battleground during the teenage years. Parents and teens can live together more or less harmoniously if parents know what to expect and are willing to make some adjustment in the way they think and act. Let's take a look at family relationships. Teens are out of balance at the same time as their parents are struggling with their own midlife pressure. While teens are dismayed by each new pimple, parents may be agonizing over every new wrinkle. While teens are thinking in terms of time, remaining in terms of the time ahead and the opportunities it will bring, parents are beginning to think in terms of time remaining and the opportunities that are diminishing. While teens are gradually acquiring more personal power, parents are often beginning to confront their own limitations. Giving up power over their children may be difficult. Good parents aim at working themselves out of their job, but the difficult part is knowing how and when to let go. Parents are not the only ones struggling with mixed feelings. As teenagers try to establish their identity, they have to adjust to the loss of childhood security and accept increasing responsibility. As our children work toward independence and self-control, our attitude to their struggle is crucial to their success. Parents and teenagers both do much better if parents can keep a sense of perspective. When parents and teens are getting along, family life can be wonderful. Teens really are enjoyable and energizing. Their wit and high spirit make them fun to be around. But when parents and teens are at odds, the teenage tendency for sullen silence and rejection can confuse and frustrate their parents. Life with teenagers is an emotional roller coaster. Certainly an adult marriage has so many ups and downs and would be considered unstable. Likely, for parents and adolescents, this on-again, off-again relationship is normal and nothing to worry about in the long run. Make the most of the good time with your teens. Think about your child's likable qualities, even when they are temporarily exhibiting their unlikable ones. It is important for parents to see the instability in the relation for what it is. It is a necessary part of the teen's development in separating from his or her parents. The do's and don'ts of parents-teen communication. Let's take a look. Don't argue with the way your teen sees things. Instead, state your own case and speak from that. I have a different option. This is what I believe, and this is the way I see it. Don't talk down to your teenager. There's nothing more irritating than a condescending tone. Don't lecture or preach. Again, this only proves less hostility. Besides, the average teenager becomes deaf after hearing about 5 sentences. Don't set limits you can't enforce. Do focus on the behavior, not the person. Do think ahead to what you will say and how you will say it. Do keep your message clear and concise, and do stick to one issue at a time. Let's move on to our second question.
We have set rules and discipline in our home. We're very strict and we make sure that our teens abide by them no matter what. Do you think this could affect our relationship with them on the long run?
This is a very interesting question. It's normal for adolescents to try to test the rules because adolescents are dependent on their parents for a long time. This can build up a great deal of resentment. This resentment can be expressed by defying parental restrictions. Some rules are non-negotiable, like don't drink and drive, but keep these to a minimum. A parent who makes a major confrontation out of every minor issue will risk losing all their influence with their teenager. In demanding quiet submission, they may unwittingly create simmering foe. Whenever possible, state rules as guidelines rather than requirements. Otherwise, family life will become a series of power struggles. Parents need to help their children make the transition from parental discipline to self-discipline. For this to happen, your teen needs to learn how to negotiate and how to cooperate in setting rules and solving problems today. As their horizon expands, teens are more often out of their sight, and they need to learn how to think for themselves so they can make the choices when parents are not around. You can help your teen practice negotiating and redirect energy that might be wasted in power struggles. Let's go on to another question.
How can I have a successful open dialogue with my teenagers that will lead to a successful negotiation and acceptance? Thanks.
Successful teen and parent negotiations depend on three things. 1. Involve your teens in the process when you make rules, set limits, or reach decisions. 2. Keep as calm and rational as possible. Even when emotions run high, it is especially important to control your anger. 3. Use the following specific problem-solving method, which will help keep negotiation focused. Problem solving has several steps. First, identify the issue for negotiating. Brainstorm solutions, evaluating and narrowing down the alternatives until you get to a solution that you both can live with. Following this, make an agreement and evaluate the outcome. In the matter of discipline, it is helpful to see inappropriate or unacceptable behaviors as a mistake in judgment or choices that carries consequences for your teen. If your teen behaves badly, make your feelings known immediately. Expressing sadness or disappointment about your teen's unacceptable behaviors is more constructive than expressing anger. The former leaves the problem where it belongs, with you, while the latter shifts the focus on you. The next step would be to negotiate with the teen what the appropriate consequences for the misbehavior should be, so that the teen can make amendments and be motivated to do better in the future. By asserting themselves, parents project by word and action the message, "I love you too." While resolving the immediate issue at hand is important, it's even more crucial for parents to take a long-range view. Their job is to help teens develop the ability to make good decisions for themselves. Young people not only lack experience, but also often they have little foresight. Parents should teach their teens to think like chess players. Before they make a move, they should try to anticipate the consequences. What will happen to me if I make the next decision or choices? At the same time, parents should be asking themselves, what can I do in this situation to help my teen be more responsible? Do the following statements sound familiar? He won't do anything around the house. She's always in her room. He is always on the phone. She can spend an hour on her hair. Why can't she spend 5 minutes to empty the dishwasher? I can't stand the way teens dress. I'm worried that they may try drugs or become sexually active. Despite the fact that most parent-teen relationships are warm and caring, issues of independence and increasing conflict emerge during the teen years. These two connected issues may cause you concern as you try to figure out how to handle them. In recent years, psychologists have revised their idea of healthy parent-teen relationships. They have found that most teens have warm, close relationships with their parents. They care about their parents' opinion of them and hold their parents' opinion in high regards. Many who do not have a good relationship with their parents have had difficulties with them for years. If your relationship with your child has always been strained, there are ways to relate more positively. Parents of children in the early teens can expect an increase in the numbers of arguments with their children. At this time, your teen is trying to establish him or herself as an independent person in the household. Once you and your family begin to acknowledge this change, the number of arguments between parents and teens usually declines. Parents feel loss of control over the adolescent and fear for the adolescent's safety because of his or her increased independence. Parents are irritated and annoyed with the adolescent's behavior. Adolescents face stress when pushing for more freedom than parents are willing to grant. When they fail to adhere to parental advice, they may engage in deviant behavior. Understanding teens' development stages and their traits as teens can help parents support their teen in developing into independent, responsible adults. Let's move on to our next question.
What does the Bible say about being a good parent?
Parenting can be a difficult and challenging venture, but at the same time, it can be the most rewarding and fulfilling thing we ever do. The Bible has a great deal to say about the way we can successfully raise our children to be men and women of God. The first thing we must do is teach them the truth about God's Word. Along with loving God and being a godly example by committing ourselves to His commands, we need to heed the command of Deuteronomy 6:7 regarding teaching our children to do the same. This passage emphasizes the ongoing nature of such instruction. It should be done at all times, at home, on the road, at night, and in the morning. Biblical truth should be the foundation of our homes. By following the principles of these commands, we teach our children that worshiping God should be constant, not reserved for Sunday mornings or nightly prayers. Although our children learn a great deal through direct teaching, they learn much more by watching us. This is why we must be careful in everything we do. We must first acknowledge our God-given roles. Husbands and wives are to be mutually respectful and submissive to each other. At the same time, God has established a line of authority to keep order. Now I want you to realize that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is man, and the head of Christ is God. We know that Christ is not inferior to God, just as a wife is not inferior to her husband. God recognizes, however, that without submission to authority, there is no order. The husband's responsibility as the head of the household is to love his wife as he loves his own body, in the same sacrificial way that Christ loved the church. In response to this loving leadership, it is not difficult for the wife to submit to her husband's authority. Her primary responsibility is to love and respect her husband, live in wisdom and purity, and take care of the home. Women are naturally more nurturing than men because they were designed to be the primary caretakers of their children. Discipline and instruction are integral parts of parenting. Proverbs 13:24 says, "He who spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him is careful to discipline him." Children who grow up in undisciplined households feel unwanted and unworthy. They lack direction and self-control, and as they get older, they rebel and have little or no respect for any kind of authority, including God's. Discipline your son, for in that there is hope. Do not be a willing party to his death. At the same time, discipline must be balanced with love, or children may grow up resentful, discouraged, and rebellious. God recognizes that discipline is painful when it is happening. But if followed by loving instruction, it is remarkably beneficial to the child. And you, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up into training and admonition of the Lord. It is important to involve children in the church family and ministry when they are young. Regularly attend Sunday school and allow them to see you studying the Word and also study it with them. Discuss with them the world around them as they see it and teach them about the glory of God through everyday life. Train a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it. Being a good parent is all about raising children who will follow your example in obeying and worshiping the Lord. Let's go and see what our church fathers say on family ties and how he will tolerate living apart from others. While it is beautiful to love your family and to be loved by them in return, if you have an intention for monasticism, God should be obeyed more than people. Christ's love should come before any other love. He who loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who loves his son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Parents prevent their children from going to the monastery by using the excuse that they are unable to tolerate being separated from them, while they let them migrate to America, Australia, Europe, and so forth, where it is difficult to see them frequently. In this respect, they can bear the separation if the motive is to get rich, but they are unable to bear it if it has to do with entering the monastery, to spend their life in God's service. Another common attitude is that some youths go to foreign countries for study or work, get married there and return with their foreign wives. In these cases, I wonder, this wife, for the love of her husband, has left her country, her family and friends, and all that she had to come with her husband and live in a completely different and at times strange atmosphere. She is able to tolerate everything because she loves her husband, while we are unable to sacrifice for the sake of the groom and beloved Lord Jesus for our eternal salvation. Truly, the Lord says, so the master commanded the unjust steward because he had dealt shrewdly. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of light. The parental love, which forbids a person from God's love and consecration, fulfills the verse, and the man's enemies will be those of his own household. Let's move on to our story for the day. A boy and his father. It was the week before Christmas. I was 5 years old and I had just finished narrating the children's program, standing on the kitchen stool from behind the pulpit at my dad's church. I will never forget the sense of accomplishment and the bond I felt with my dad that night. It was truly a magical moment when Dad scooped me off the stool and gave me a big old hug and kiss in front of the whole congregation. I never felt safer than when I was in my father's arms. I wondered if I would follow in his footsteps and become a priest someday. This is one of the earliest and fondest memories of my dad. He was a very loving, kind, and gentle man. I always knew he would be there for me, and nothing I could do would change his love for me. His love was unconditional. Mum was the youngest in her family and was rejected by her father because her natural mother died giving birth to her. Raised by her older sisters, the insecurity she felt as a child enslaved her to a life of seeking safety for herself and her loved ones. My mother was obsessed with appearances. The house had to be spotless and orderly at all times, and things had to look like we were the perfect family, no matter what was going on behind the scenes. I can remember her saying, "If this gets out, it could ruin your father's career." I lived in the fear of her rejection and in horror that I might do something that would ruin Dad. Mum's love was conditional and given out sparingly when she felt it was deserved. I learned to keep things to myself. She couldn't get upset about what she didn't know. When I was 12 years old, I began to realize there was a world out there much different than the one in which my parents lived. I wasn't really in rebellion, but life in the glass house was taking its toll. I think the Lord saw my heart and decided it was time to reel me in a bit. At a Wednesday night service, a guest speaker shared a detailed description of the physical suffering Christ endured on the cross while describing the love that held him there. That night, I got my first touch from God. I was so overwhelmed by his love and acceptance. I wept deep sobs for what seemed to be hours. I understood it was his love for me that held Jesus to the tree. This was the first time I realized that there was more to being a Christian than doing the right things and going to church. So this ends our episode for today on parent-teen relationship. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we are looking forward to meeting you in our next episode. God bless you and stay safe.